Welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Janelle Johnson, licensed marriage and family therapist. Janelle is a wife, mother, and founder of Bridges Family Life Center, a systemic therapy and consulting group practice near Raleigh, North Carolina. An award-winning educator and innovative mental health leader, she is often sought out for her social justice advocacy regarding intersectionality of ableism, sexism, and racism. She currently serves as president of the North Carolina Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. A graduate of North Carolina State University and Chapman University, she's returned to her first alma mater as a doctoral student in the Educational Equity Program. Janelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really interested to learn more about your research and your story. So all of the amazing work that you've been doing. So you have discovered in recent years as an adult that you're autistic. So how and when did you make that discovery?
Great question, Carolyn. So my story is a little unique. Every time I tell it, I chuckle because it's an odd thing. I'm a therapist and I've been doing therapy for about 11 years. And so about 6 years ago, I found myself sitting in front of a Black man who I came to diagnose as autistic. And it wasn't the first time that I had given, a preliminary diagnosis of autism, like referred him for more testing. It wasn't the first time that I had done that, but it was the first time I'd done it for a Black person.
Oh,
And so talking with him and finding out about his story and giving him this diagnosis um, was like looking in a mirror. It was the most odd experience I've ever had and he left and I took a break and I went out to my car and I cried and I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I'm autistic." And she was like, "What?" And I said, "I'm telling you I'm autistic." And she was like, "Oh, I guess that makes sense." And I'm like, "Yeah, it makes a lot of sense." But like, why did I not think of my son got diagnosed or preliminary diagnosis when he was 2.
mhm.
And so this is 3 years after that,
Mm.
almost. And so, yeah, it was an interesting experience. So I haven't received an official diagnosis, but my therapist, the last therapist that I had, we did quite a bit of work on that. And she agreed with me. She wanted to know, did I want to go get an official diagnosis? And I'm like,
Mm.
maybe not. I haven't decided if I'm going to go through the whole process or not. I don't have, it's time consuming and I'm busy,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
but, but yes, it, the quasi diagnosis I've got, it's been eye opening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that you described it to your mother and family, and first they were surprised, and then they're like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." It's like, yeah, but like, why is this just coming up now of all things? So I'm curious. I guess a lot of times when you're when you discover that you're autistic as an adult, you kind of look back on your life and your childhood and try to see, reevaluate situations you were in and things that you did in that new lens of realizing that you're autistic. So I guess what was it like for you growing up? And have you kind of looked back and said, well, maybe that was because I was autistic that I reacted or felt this or that way?
Oh, sure. I have always been different. I've always had challenges with social interactions. I was the kid that played by myself on the playground for forever. I mean, as long most of my memories, I'm playing by myself, and not because I was being bullied or anything. It's just I chose to play by myself. Like I didn't want to play with other kids, and I always just felt different. I always felt like I was odd, or I didn't get the things that other people got. Or just understood. It didn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
And even smaller things like speech differences. My family has all these funny stories about how I used to talk as a toddler and preschooler that make a lot of sense now. And yeah, just always been different. And now it makes sense why.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like, and everybody's story is a little different, but sometimes there are like very obvious or quote unquote textbook signs that someone might be autistic at a young age. But I feel like, at least a lot for girls and women, people assigned female at birth, that those signs aren't always as clear. So, but there is that sense of like, I'm feeling different from other people, or I may be more solitary. Maybe you have a few friends, but you know, the social interactions and the communications are different. So
Oh,
it's interesting.
spot on, spot on. I remember in maybe it was fourth or fifth grade. I struggled early on, but I don't know, it's just the right combination of factors, and a great teacher really saw what I was capable of, and I ended up being in a gifted program and all
Mhm.
that jazz. And so in fifth grade, they wanted me to skip a grade because I was so far ahead. And my mom told them, like, she can't handle that socially. She can't
Yeah.
handle that. That would destroy her. She's kind of barely hanging on now. I'm a little, I'm a little ahead or behind age wise. I'm a year younger than most of the folks in my grade I was.
Hmm.
And so she was like, she's already a year younger. She's already really struggling. I can't imagine putting her in middle school right now.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't work. Like, we just, keep supplementing what she has, but we can't let her skip a grade. Um, which was a great decision, honestly. It really was. But that's how profound my social challenges were, where my mom was like, no, I'm not gonna let my child skip a grade.
Hmm.
So yes, I struggled. I didn't make friends. If if I made friends, it was because she kind of like facilitated me meeting someone,
Hmm.
because she's very social. And so that was the way that I had any friends at all. But I didn't make friends on my own at all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's good that your mom was aware of your, your social capacity and kept you back from skipping that grade, because yeah, that's a pretty major thing. And it's really interesting, the whole intersection of being considered a gifted student, but also neurodivergent or autistic or, ADHD, or
Right.
because I mean, certainly back when I was in school, if you were a good student and you made good grades, it kind of didn't matter what else was going on in your life. Like, people kind of
Exactly.
didn't really notice the social thing or the struggles, or when you're a teenager, the feelings and all those issues. So yeah, that's its own unique challenge, because people kind of look at a kid that's making pretty good grades or great grades is like, oh, they're fine. Like, they're totally fine. It's tough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you do a lot of really amazing work. You started your own business around marriage and family therapy, and you also do business consulting. And I think I had heard on another podcast somewhere that psychology was kind of almost like an early interest for you, that you've been interested in that since you were a teenager. So how did you discover that love for psychology at a young age?
Well, my family adopted when I was 12. And so there was just a lot of challenges that we had challenges in our own family, because other members of my family are also neurodivergent and hadn't been diagnosed besides me. And so we had this kind of hodgepodge collection of folks that were living in this home together, trying to make the best of life, not really having the supports that we probably would have benefited from. And then we adopted on top of that. So we adopted two girls. And so there was a situation where a family member of my sisters, my adopted, was adopted by a family I knew. And they called us called my mom one night, and I was 14 at the time. Called my mom one night and talked about some challenges they were having and how they went to a psychologist to get help, and the psychologist told them that there was nothing to help them with, basically. Like everything was fine, and they thought it was odd because, the situation that they were facing, they wanted help with managing their child, their adopted child, and they were just told basically like it's not really an issue, and there's really nothing I can do to help you with that.
Wow.
And it frustrated me. It frustrated me. Their situation frustrated me, but then I later came to understand that our family situation also frustrated me. Like, where were we supposed to go for help? Who was supposed to give us guidance on how to manage all these different traumas and neurodivergence differences, and who was supposed to help us manage all of this stuff? Who was supposed to tell us how to do this so that we didn't have to keep running up against all these problems? That's what got me asking questions like, why didn't that psychologist help that family? And so I had the opportunity to take an honor psychology class at Davis online when I was 15. And so that's how long I've been studying psychology, since I was 15 years old.
Wow. Yeah, it's powerful when your interests are really rooted in your own experience. You can totally see how it fuels that passion and that fire to learn more. And it sounds like really to be able to make the difference in people's lives that in that example that psychologist wasn't able to do or to able to help.
Exactly, exactly. I found myself asking later on when I started my master's program, like what what spurred that? And we don't know. Was that because this was a Black family in white rural Kansas? Was that because, this is a Christian family, and the psychologist wasn't comfortable in helping with all of those things that go into that? Was it because we don't know? Like,
Yeah.
we don't know. We don't know what it was. And at the end of the day, that family and families like mine weren't getting what they needed back then. And we didn't have anywhere safe to go. We didn't have Black clinicians or Black or brown clinicians that were doing the work where we could go somewhere and not have to explain all these other factors that go into being a Black family,
Yeah.
and have someone really understand us. So that's what spurred my work for, I guess, the first 15 years of my career, or 10 years of my career. It's been rewarding work, I'll say that for sure. For
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. So as a marriage and family therapist, in terms of some of the issues that you help people with, I imagine it's a whole wide range of issues, like so many different things that happen in families. But
Yeah.
do you get to serve a lot of Black and brown clients? Do you find that there are, well, I imagine there are certainly, other trauma related issues that come into that just from the experience of being a Black or brown person in the United States and how that flows into, to the family and to marriage and how that manifests as well.
Definitely, definitely. It's one of the reasons why I chose family psychology, or to be a marriage and family therapist specifically, because psychology is kind of like a pretty broad umbrella.
Mhm.
But it's what resonated with me most. Most Black and brown families were more, we come from collectivist cultures. And so I felt like being a family therapist and learning how to address things systemically through relationship, um, how to address mental health challenges or trauma or what have you, like that's just in alignment with being a Black person. Like, we care about community, we care about connection. And so that's why I chose it. I felt like more Black and brown families would engage in therapy through that modality.
Mhm.
And so yes, that's what we've seen. I think it's a combination of the modality that we've chosen, and also that we are Black and brown providers. So there's a team of 7 of us, and 6 of us are Black.
Mhm.
And so I would say almost 70%, about 65% of our clients are Black or brown. And they come because they see what we look like, and we hear it over and over again. I was looking for a Black therapist. I was looking for a person of color. And we hear it over and over and over.
Yeah, it's important because the whole field of psychology, although it's based on standards and practices, there's so much subjectivity that goes into it. Whether you're getting a diagnosis, even getting an autism diagnosis really depends
Uh-huh.
on who you get and how they've been trained and who they talk to, what their life experiences are, how they've been educated, even just that one small subset. So I can totally see how it's so valuable to have Black and brown therapists where at a minimum the client doesn't have to go in and try to explain like all these other issues to a white therapist who hasn't had that experience or hasn't educated themselves on it. So yeah, that's really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And especially with that overlap where we're talking about, in essence,
Mhm.
and this is something that a lot of mental health professionals don't think about, but we're serving a disabled population. Everyone that walks in our doors that we give a diagnosis to, we're saying that their the environment is disabling to them because it doesn't accommodate their anxiety or their depression
Yeah.
or their HD or their autism or what have you. And so we're talking about serving multiply marginalized folks, and the nuance that's required to do that is something that I don't think we give enough attention to.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the work that I've been focused on for the last 3 or 4 years, is digging into that nuance after having started at the practice and seeing what we were experiencing of the first 2 or 3 years. I'm like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over and over. So many systemic issues are leading to these mental health challenges, people being triggered from past traumas, the intergenerational trauma that's being passed down from each generation. Is There's just so much to it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those are just environments that people, there's no easy fix to that. It's like, well, you can change your thinking, but at the same time, the systemic racism, the intergenerational trauma, the constant news cycle of, racist events happening again and again is always
Uh-huh.
going to be there. So it's like you can't change your environment really. So that's got to be such a challenge. So it's good to have therapists who understand that experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we love it too, and it's cool. It's cool not just because of the work that we're doing with the community here in North Carolina, but also the experience that we have working together,
Mhm.
being Black and brown therapists who are working in an environment where we don't have to navigate a lot of those challenges that we do in other work settings, on top of the stressors of being a therapist. It's I think I'm equally excited to provide an environment like that for the therapists that work at Bridges, just as equally excited to provide that to them as I am the services that we're providing to the community at large. And then to be able to kind of codify what we're doing and teach other therapists and teach other educators, other healthcare workers about the things that we've learned over the last 5 years is really
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, totally. A great supportive and understanding and validating work environment as well. Absolutely. And in addition to the therapy work that you've been doing, you're also now doing research in educational equity. And that's really fascinating. I heard a little bit about that on another podcast as well. It just sounds like an amazing program, and it's at your alma mater as well, so local to you. So, yeah, tell me, how did you discover that program and get involved with that?
Oh my gosh, I always tell people like it had to be God. I'm a Christian person, and so there's some things that's just like there's not enough coincidence and fate to
Mhm.
explain that. So, long story short, I ended up finding myself sitting in front of my dean to my old college. So I was at the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at NC State when I was in undergrad. And a whole bunch of things happened where I'm sitting in a meeting with him. Long story. And we got to talking, and somehow or another, I found myself talking to the dean about autism in North Carolina and how the prevalence of autism diagnosis for Black boys was on the rise. And that's where we were seeing this like huge skyrocket in the rates of diagnosis. And I said, we don't think about it. But I said, if you picture, what do you see when you see an autistic person? He said, I see a white male, a young white child, male child. And I'm like, yeah, but in North Carolina, that's really transferring. Like, you're just as likely to see a Black boy as you are a white boy. And I don't know how we got on the topic, but he was like, okay, these are all the people I want you to meet. And I was there to talk about IO psychology. I thought I wanted to do industrial organizational psychology. I wanted to stay in the psychology field. And he was like, I know you said this is what you're interested in, but I want you to meet Dr. Pearson. She studies autism in Black families. And I think that you would really enjoy meeting her. And I'm like, I know of her. Yes, sure. And so, she got the email from him, and, who's going to turn down an opportunity to meet someone the dean says you should meet. So she saw it. She said, oh, yeah, I'll meet with you. And we got to talking, and she found out that I was autistic. And she told me about this program I didn't know existed. It had just started 2 years prior, the educational equity program. And she's like, you should apply. I'm one of the faculty. I would love to work with you. And I'm like, wow, I had no plans of doing educational equity before, but you're right. It makes sense. Like, the reason I've been doing what I'm doing for the last 20 years is because the last 10 years is because I want to improve education and healthcare for disabled Black and brown people. And if that's the larger thing, then why not take some time doing some research to advocate for that.
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. And your combination of having that real lived experience through the therapy that you've been doing for the 10, 15 years prior, to be able to then apply that to research is really powerful, like having those two types of experiences together.
And 3 types of experience, with the lived experience of being autistic and being a parent of an autistic child. So it's just a whole bunch of things that I'm able to bring to the lab that I'm excited to be able to contribute, ways that I've been pushed to grow and develop and that I didn't know was possible. Doctoral programs stretch you. They really do. But it's a good stretching.
That's cool. So are you doing research specifically on the intersectionality of autism and race, or is it disability as a broader category and race, ethnicity, or?
So my research specifically is on disability and race, the intersectionality of disability and race. But in the lab, Dr. Pearson's work in the lab that we're doing there is specifically Black and Latin families and autism, that intersection.
Wow.
So the research I'm doing in the lab, that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And I in my own dissertation work that I'm putting together, I've been thinking about narrowing it down to neurodiversity, because disability is such a large umbrella. But yeah, that's my vein.
That's really awesome. And that research is so necessary and so needed. There's such an enormous gap in research on autism and Black and brown families. So that's really incredible. That's really going to make a huge difference, and that's just so exciting to be able to contribute that.
Yes, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. My work is really focused on the voices of neurodivergent or disabled students and faculty and learners in the community. There's something to be said about how valuable our lived experience is and what it can contribute to the academy that hasn't been. And we're seeing, like, I think what spurred this thought in my mind is living through COVID. Disabled folks, we have been telling the world what all this time and what would make things work better.
Mhm.
And nobody would listen to us until COVID. And then it's like, oh, all of a sudden we can find out how to do everything online and you can work from home all you want.
Mhm.
And yes, we said we couldn't provide that kind of service online before, but we actually can. And you
Mhm.
don't have to come to the doctor's office as much. You could be doing virtual, just, you know, all these things that we've been needing and we've been saying that we've been needing. And everybody wanted to listen later, but it wasn't credited to us that we were the ones who have been telling the world that this needed to happen. And so the focus of my research is like, how do we tap into what the most marginalized folks are saying is needed? How do we tap into that untapped knowledge and bring it forward to teach everybody else the things that we know? How do we bring value to that? Because it is valuable. What we know, our life, our lived experiences is very valuable.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. As you said, it tends to be more marginalized people, whether it's, disabled people, Black or brown people who experience those issues first and are often the ones trying to raise the alarm and educate. And yeah, so it's really frustrating when it impacts wider populations that people say, oh, this is an issue that I discovered. It's like, no, we've been talking about this for decades. So
Yeah, it's called interest convergence. It's this phenomenon where we don't get what we need until it coincides with the powers that be with their interests. Then we get what we need, but otherwise it's not important. So the research that I'd like to do is a way to combat some of that with my own lived experience. And I'm not the only um, educated or professional or entrepreneur or whatever that is neurodivergent or that's disabled. There's lots of us. And it would be cool to tap into like the things that we know and not just us, anyone that is neurodivergent or disabled. You don't have to be educated in order to be a contributor to knowledge that we need to make life better.
yeah, absolutely. Are there any early findings from your research that you're able to share at this point yet?
Not yet. And I only say that because I'm still narrowing down on what I'd like to research specifically. But I will say that, and like we've talked about already, I will say that the gap is massive. It's a
Yeah.
really big gap in our knowledge on Black and Brown autistic experiences or Black and Brown neurodivergent experiences. I'm looking at higher ed specifically, but just in general, there's a big gap there. And also, just in the last 2 or 3 years, there really has been a huge uptick in the study of ableism in general. And so I think a lot of that research is slow. So I think a lot of it is gonna be coming out for the public over the next 5 years. We're gonna see like an uptick in us understanding how ableism impacts the world. We've already been seeing it in the past year or two, and it's going to expand quite a bit because a lot of the dissertations in the last 2 or 3 years there's been a lot more work on the in general. Um, and I think that's also because of folks like me and anyone that's been late diagnosed. There's a lot of people who we're there in academia, and now we know what's been going on with us for the last 20 or 30 years of our lives. But we're sitting in the place to be able to do the research now,
Yeah.
and those opportunities weren't provided to disabled folk a generation or two ago. There was no idea. There wasn't the expanded stuff from the ADA. Those things weren't there to allow those folks to be in those positions to do that research.
That's really powerful to have disabled and autistic researchers doing research on the topic. It makes a big difference in so many different ways. Absolutely.
For
Cool.
sure.
Yeah. And so, in addition to your therapy work and the research you're doing, you also share a lot about your own lived experience. I found you through LinkedIn. I think I probably found you through one of your most popular posts about masking, where you talked about after discovering that you're autistic, a situation where you were trying to process how to mask less. And I found that fascinating because as a newly diagnosed autistic person myself, I have a hard time wrapping my head around, like, what is my masking? Like, who am I? And is this legitimately me, or is this something I'm doing for some other
Oh
reason? So
gosh,
I
yes.
was so interested in your concept and your process. So yeah, would love to learn more about, maybe sharing a bit about that post or your experience and how it's been going as far as unmasking, what it's been like for you.
For sure. So that post was my coming out. Neurodivergent people come out as well. So that was my coming out post. And I shared about the first time that my therapist asked me how masking might be impacting my chronic illnesses. I have a couple of chronic illnesses, and that was the reason that I was in therapy. And so they had been newly diagnosed, and I was trying to wrap my head around what it meant to be disabled in a different way. I had never explored internalized ableism or anything like that before that point. And so when she asked me about masking, I ended up having a meltdown that day in session. And we had been working together for about 4 or 5 months, and she had never seen anything like that. And the reason it was so difficult for me was a lot of what you were saying. It was difficult for me to wrap my head around, you know, what constitutes me and what constitutes masking. Like, how do I even begin to tease that apart? Not just for autism reasons, but just trauma reasons as well. I'm a trauma survivor too, and like a lot of autistic people are.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I, I I don't know how to tease apart what's me and what's masking. Um, More than that, as a Black professional, what in the world is my life going to look like if I start telling people that I'm autistic?
Yeah.
What is my life going to be like if I start requesting accommodations? How is that going to impact my business? How is that going to impact people's interest in wanting to work with me? Are people going to start me differently, or the all the layered parts of like what it means to not just be autistic, but to be autistic and Black and a woman? I didn't think that I could survive that. But I was having to face these questions because if I didn't, I had to change something. I had to change how my life was going because my body just gave up. My body was just like, no, nope, we're not going to let you. Nope, you're going to be. I was mostly in the bed. I was in the bed at least half of the month from 2020 through like mid 2020, the end of 2021. So like almost 2 years. But I was in the bed all the time. Like I couldn't function. And I had to figure out something. Like I have to change my life if I want to have any kind of quality of life, and if I want to keep my business, if I want to, continue to do the work that I want to do. But I couldn't wrap my head around like what I'm supposed to do with this masking piece.
Yeah.
It was really difficult. I talked about in the post how my therapist would try to like bring it up again, and I just put up all the walls, and we actually didn't really get to dig into it until a year later.
Wow.
It took me that long to have enough mental space, because this was the pandemic as well. So it's the pandemic, and I'm managing learning about these new chronic illnesses after I had long COVID. It was just a lot. George Floyd.
Yeah.
I mean, all that was happening. I didn't have space to think about masking. I can't do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a while. And then I was able to find space to unmask, like find pockets of spaces. I found out that I was masking at home sometimes, and it's like, why? My husband is the most accepting human ever. He celebrates all of my differences. He married me because he thought that my mind was cool. And so, like, and he's probably neurodivergent too. I told him on our first date that I thought he was ADHD, and he laughs. But now he really believes me. Like, I wasn't just kidding. Like, I really think you're ADHD. That's why we get along so well. But yeah, I I decided that it was worth the risk because I deserve to have freedom, and other Black and Brown neurodivergent people deserve to have freedom. And I'm in the position, because I'm a business owner and my business is 5 years old. I have employees. We make a decent living. It's not, huge or anything, but we're comfortable, right? Like I have a lot of things in place that allow me to take risks that other people can't, literally can't. And why not allow myself to take those risks so maybe other people will have more chances to do that?
Yeah.
Or at least feel comfortable enough to share it in certain spaces like our LinkedIn neurodivergent communities or Facebook communities or wherever. Or bringing it up with their therapist. You know, there are safe places and people, they just need the encouragement from someone else that looks like them doing it to say, hey, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. And yeah, if you're in a position where you have, at least you feel a reasonable amount of safety to be able to talk freely about your experiences, it absolutely can, you know, inspire and motivate and comfort other people who are in similar situations. Yeah. And just for listeners, because the term masking in this pandemic has multiple meanings. We're talking about autistic masking. I think most of my
Yes.
listeners are familiar with the term, but just to be clear. So yeah, but that it's, a form of masking your autistic traits. And that's what you've been trying to unwind and unmask and just try to be more of your own autistic self.
Yeah.
And you also wrote a LinkedIn post, which was really interesting exploration of this, relating somewhat to masking, but around the differences you saw between code switching, which so many Black people have to do in certain situations, and neuro switching, which I don't know if it's the same as masking or a related term. Can you tell me more about that? Because that was just so fascinating to understand the interplay.
So neuro switching is not an official term. That is
Right.
Janelle Johnson coining. If you hear anybody else saying it, they got it from me. And neuro switching is a term that's like in other, like in tech. But I found that I needed language to talk about what it was like to be a Black professional that code switches, but also an autistic professional who does what? Like I needed a word, and that's where I came up with the word switching. This idea of the compound effects of being Black and autistic and navigating social interactions. It's not the same. It's not the same as a white autistic person managing those differences. And it's not the same as a Black person who's not autistic managing those challenges. There's something different happening there because I'm having to navigate not just how you may perceive me as a Black person, but I'm also having to navigate, do I understand the context? Do I understand what's being said in the conversation? Do I know when to interject? Do I know the joke? Do I get the joke? Like there's so many other things that are happening on top of me being a Black person in that space.
Mhm.
And so I call it neuro switching. And that's something that I'm actually looking forward to writing a bit about in the coming months. I brought it up in the lab. The lab thought it was a great idea. So you may see some cool writing come about with that term in the next year or two.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more about that because, yeah, you're right. It's not, they're not the same thing. It is literally like you're in a situation and you have to either consciously or subconsciously manage through all of these different scenarios and reactions and probably, your affect, like, what's the appropriate amount of friendly for the situation. So yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot
Mm-hmm.
to process.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And not just like once you've managed one side of it, you have to actually analyze the other part too. And a lot of it is subconscious because you've been doing it all your life.
Mm-hmm.
You get to this place where, okay, I know what the joke is. Now, how do I interject in a way where they don't think I'm the angry Black woman? Like, you still have to do all the parts. You have to make sure that everything's nice and buttoned up before you get into the conversation.
Yeah.
And the stress of that when you're an autistic Black person is mind boggling. It's yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you write more about that, I'm looking forward to reading about that. Wow, there's definitely a lot behind that. We've talked about your therapy work and your research, and you also do consulting with organizations as a trainer and inclusion strategist. So
Mhm.
I'm curious about how that part of your business evolved. Was it influenced by your experiences, your interests, and how did that come about?
So, hmm, I think I've always had educator bones.
Mhm.
So being in an education program now, I'm like, yeah, I probably should have done education a long time ago. But I've always had educator bones. I like to tell people what I know, and I like to learn. That's not just telling people what I know, but I like to learn in return as well. And so um, I found myself creating trainings and programs because people were asking me questions, mostly therapists at the time. How do you manage this situation with my Black supervisee who had the situation happen in the therapy room? So I found myself like making trainings and programs to help therapists understand the Black experience, the intersection of being Black and having a mental health challenge, and also how to interact with one another as colleagues. And so then George Floyd happened, um, and he was murdered in 2020, and the flood of requests came, people wanting to get my thoughts and get my opinions and wanting me to come train their practices and wanting me to, just do things. I said, you know what? Sure, I will do it. I'm already doing a little of it anyway. And so I started creating programs and trainings, and we ended up creating what's called collective conversation. And it's this methodology, trademarked methodology, to help organizations know how to talk about race, how to talk about disability, how to talk about these topics that they're challenging because we didn't grow up talking about them.
Yeah.
And more than that, we were told not to.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we find ourselves in situations where they have to be talked about. Things are happening in businesses and boardrooms and therapy rooms and doctors' offices. Things are happening in there. And there are repercussions to what's happening in there. And we don't have any of the skills necessary to communicate well. So that's what collective conversation is about. It's about teaching leadership teams how to have these conversations, giving them the skills that they need so that they'll shy away from it less because they feel like they're capable of talking about these things.
Yeah.
that's what we kept finding is people were skipping over the how. Like,
Mm.
how do I talk about race? I know you keep telling me I need to and I should, but how do I do it? Family therapists do really well with teaching people about communication. And so we were like, hey, let's teach people how to talk about these really hard topics. And that's where that came about. And so now we've done trainings with people all across the country. And we've worked with folks in Texas and in California and Colorado, a couple of places here in DC. And people reach out and they want to know how to improve their skill set in intercultural connection. So it's been really cool.
That's great. Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people just don't know how to have that conversation because you don't grow up talking about these things. And you may learn what you're not supposed to say, which is not helpful in a time of crisis when you
Nope.
need to have communication. It's like, no, how do we need to have this conversation. It needs to happen. So yeah.
That's right. So we teach people AAA. AAA is how to manage a relational rupture. Relational ruptures tend to happen when someone says a racist remark or when someone ignores someone's request for accessibility. You have these relational ruptures happen in your workplaces and you're wondering why people aren't getting along. And these things are just kind of sitting there. But practicing AAA helps. AAA is acknowledge, ask, act. Those are the 3 steps. And we teach people how to do each of those steps in a way where they can repair those ruptures and start to do the work to transform their organizations.
Mm-hmm. And does that work with employees too? So obviously training leadership is critically important because they set the whole, standard and the tone for the entire organization. But I'm thinking, sometimes there are organizations that will say one thing and maybe their leaders are on board, but and I'm thinking of these specifically, maybe like asking for an accommodation. So of course you may have an organization that absolutely supports that, but then maybe an employee asks for something and their manager just like, freaks out or doesn't get it or doesn't understand what the law is or what's allowed. So do you also work with people who aren't necessarily on the leadership teams to help them through that conversation process in a way that respects the whole corporate hierarchy, complicated power structures?
Definitely. We believe that there's certain parts of our program that we encourage the leadership to have everyone they can be a part of. And the basic training that we provide is one of those things. Everyone needs to know how to do AAA in order for it to work in your organization. So everyone's got to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other parts that are just for the leadership because, as you said earlier, they're the ones who set the tone. They're the ones who can change policy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's powerful to have everyone to have those tools, to have those often difficult conversations to help navigate through them. That's great. Well, Janelle, you're doing so much great work in this area to help people and companies and families to really meet their maximum health and cope with a lot of the challenges and stresses in society today. I'm really grateful that you came on the show to talk about all of these issues. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the type of work that you do?
Sure. So the best way to reach me actually is to reach out on our website. Our website is bridgesflc.com. That's for Bridges Family Life Center. So bridgesflc.com. You can go on there, click Let's Connect, and you can reach out there. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm the Family Fanatic. So you can follow me there. I haven't been posting much lately because, being a student is a lot, but I usually post a lot when we have breaks. I tend to post a lot more often, but I have tons of great content. I've been posting for the last 5 or 6 years. So especially on my Facebook page, there's such great content, videos, you name it. It's all up there. So be sure to check it out. So yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put those links in the show notes so people can click on them very easily from there. Awesome. Yeah. As we close out, Janelle, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know or anything that they can help or support you with?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what I would just encourage everyone to do, and this isn't necessarily for me, this is for you as the listener. I would encourage everyone to make sure to prioritize rest. It is really hard to prioritize rest in America. We value productivity, which is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. There's been this rush to kind of get over COVID. But COVID is still happening. And not only that, it was really traumatic for pretty much everybody. And it was a long time. So, and we're not out of the woods. So I just encourage people to, make sure you're taking good care of yourselves, get good rest, build a great support system. Can't figure out everything by yourself. And make sure you seek out therapy. If you're in North Carolina, give us a call. We're happy to help you and your family manage your needs for your mental health and your relational health. So reach out to us. We're happy to help. If you're across the country or international, feel free to reach out to us for consulting.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely important to prioritize rest. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Janelle, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carolyn. I've had such a great time. I'm like cheesing because I'm just so excited about how cool this conversation was. Thank you. Thank you for having me.